Following on from last week's episode where we saw Banner approaching the Yellowstone ranch and the conflict reaching the most dangerous point that it had been at, episode 4 saw the result of the conflict, how the Dutton family planned on dealing with it, and also if Jake managed to survive. With us seeing Spencer's arc continuing as well, it certainly looked as though he could now be heading back to Montana from Africa. So with that, I thought I'd recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is 1923 episode 4 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. As we embarked into the final part of the episode, we saw that we spent it with Spencer in Africa with his newfound fiancée Alex. Spencer had been compressing his internal demons down and wasn't prepared to face going back home following his involvement in the Great War. However, with Alex by his side, we saw that he was finally ready to do so. They did this by reading through all of the letters that had been sent by his Aunt Cara over the years, and most of them were filled with tales of what had been going on at the ranch. However, the last letter that we saw being read was the one that was most recently written and the one that we saw Cara writing in episode 3 of the show, where she stated that Spencer's brother was killed, Jack was injured, and his uncle Jake was on the verge of death due to the hands of the enemy. By the time Spencer was reading the letter, we found out that 3 months had passed, and then it cut to black and the episode finished. With it being 3 months passing since we were last on the ranch where we saw that Cara went to the Livestock Association meeting, we don't know if Jake has managed to survive his injuries. When we next go back to Yellowstone, it will most likely give us that answer. I feel like Jake will survive the injuries that he endured though. This also means that Spencer is now faced with the question on if he should return back to the Yellowstone ranch to seek revenge and support his family in a range war that's most likely going to be the death of them if he doesn't return. We know how much of a strong character Spencer is and also a skillful navigator and fighter, so he would be of great use when it came to facing Banner and the men that he's brought to be on his side. Spencer is also the inheritor of the ranch following on from his uncle Jake and also his brother, so I feel we'll most certainly see him return. Let's break the rest of this video down by the endings for the other characters. Cara. We saw a heartbroken Cara at the start of the episode and we as the viewers weren't told whether or not Jake had survived, but by the end of the episode it seemed as though he'd just about made it through. However, due to him being in a severely injured state, we saw Cara now take over as head of the ranch and was prepared to make decisions on behalf of him. So much so that at the Livestock Association meeting we saw that she forged documents in the name of her husband. This was done in order to get a police force established in the area so that she'd be able to be a little bit more protected and would also be able to enforce rules in order to stop the cattle thieves from carrying on with what they were doing. Banner. Banner is a real villain and he's extremely unlikable. Jake's words in episode 2 of "I hope some of them survive so they know what I do to them" has definitely come back to haunt him now. Banner met with Donald Whitfield so that he'd be able to get funds off of him in order to build a large group of men that would be able to outnumber the force at the Dutton's ranch. Banner plans on doing this because he wants to take over the Yellowstone ranch as that's where most of the wealth lies within the state. It's clear to see that he's paranoid following on from what occurred at the end of episode 3, as he wasn't inside of his house. However, with only himself and 2 other of his men surviving, it showed that he definitely needs more in order to beat the Duttons. Whitfield came across as a man that you wouldn't want to mess with and put an extremely harsh threat out there to Banner, so I'll be intrigued to see if he does end up crossing him at some point. Teonna. With us not having a feature of Teonna in last week's episode, this one gave us a slightly longer installment of the character's arc. It's incredibly hard to watch Teonna going through the abuse that she's been facing at the hands of Sister Mary and the others. Sister Mary comes across as an evil individual. Teonna stands up for what's right and she's constantly punished for doing so. With us seeing her finally seeking revenge and taking out Sister Mary during the night, Teonna will now be on the run after leaving the school. However, with us seeing her grandmother in episode 2 looking to legally adopt her and get her out of the boarding school, I feel we could see their paths just miss each other, and Teonna may have taken the path of no return. Because not only will she be on the run from the boarding school, but because she killed Sister Mary, she'll most likely be on the run from the authorities too, so it's going to be a difficult time for her. Jack. With Jack and his fiancée Elizabeth being injured in the battle that occurred last week, we saw that her mother came to visit her whilst she was resting. It was here where we saw the two families collide, as her mother wanted to take her away from the ranch due to her father being killed and Elizabeth herself being severely injured. However, we saw that she decided to stay on the ranch with Jack, and it seems as though they're going to live out their days there. Jack is a character that it feels still has a lot of growing and developing to do. He's the youngest out of them all, and it's clear to see that his maturity levels are still slightly lower than the others around him. With it looking as though Spencer is going to be returning to the ranch, I feel as though we could see Jack look up to him quite a lot as a role model, especially considering that he's not seen him in a long while, which I think could have an effect on Jack and alter the character slightly. I thought this episode was quite a good one. It followed on from a somewhat boring episode 3 apart from the final third, and there was a lot of the show to address due to the aftermath of what occurred. I feel Spencer had a really interesting backstory and separate arc at the start of the season, but they're really leaning in on his relationship with Alex, and it just feels a little bit forced, over the top, and unnatural when watching. He's gone from being quite a troubled character and a lone wolf to this person who's now dependent and besotted by somebody that he's just met. He came across as a closed book and somebody who liked to keep himself to himself, especially with the issues that he was dealing with. But now, every time we see him, he's being intimate with Alex. I just hope with him returning back to Yellowstone, we'll get to see more of him being how he was before. The story with the boarding school is always an extremely hard watch because they don't hold back what they show us as a viewer when watching, and you really do feel for Teonna, so I'm intrigued to see where that one's going to go. The main story is the one that I'm finding extremely interesting and engaging. I'd argue almost more so than Yellowstone Season 5, seeing the ranch in a more historical time having to face an impending battle from an outside threat is interesting to see. Like Yellowstone, this series has incredible shots of the scenery, a good score underlying the emotional moments that matter, and a cast that are delivering the characters so convincingly every week. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in episode 5 of the show, as we set to enter the final half of the season, where it seems as though Spencer is going to return back to the Yellowstone ranch and support his family in their time of need. I imagine we'll also see if Jake managed to survive the injuries that he endured too. So, there you have it, 1923 episode 4 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.